YouTube. Today we're going to talk about hammer fired pistols versus striker fired pistols. And what we have here in front of us, we have a Glock 21 chambered in 45 ACP. That's your striker fired pistol I'm going to use. And we have a SIG 220 Elite chambered in 45 ACP, and this is your hammer fired pistol. And before we get started, I'm going to show you that neither one of these pistols have anything in them, and we are clear to make this video. So I hope everybody had a great holiday. I'm sure it's not quite over with yet, but we're getting close here. I've just been very busy moving, and that's why you haven't seen me as much, but we're going to start resuming making videos again. So what we're going to do, we're going to start off with this Glock 21. This is a Glock 21 chambered in 45 ACP. This is a striker-fired pistol. And what is a striker-fired pistol? Well, a striker-fired pistol does not have any kind of external hammer, nor does it have a hammer at all. What it has is a metal striker on the inside that's spring-loaded. And the way it works, it has a spring on it that pulls back and catches. And when you charge this firearm, loads around into the chamber, and there's a striker actually lined up on the inside of this slide. And this trigger, it just releases the spring on the striker, and it makes contact with the primer and sets the projectile down the barrel. Very simple design. One of the big advantages of having a striker fired pistol is the simplicity of it. There's very few moving parts in it, and it's very easy to disassemble. These things come apart in a matter of seconds without any kind of special tools or anything like that, and people love them. And it's just a very great design, very low cost to manufacture, very low cost to purchase. If you were to purchase your very first firearm, or you want a limited amount of firearms just for tool purposes, a striker fired pistol is a great option because they're usually a lot lower cost to buy than a hammer fired pistol. Now, the second one we have here is a SIG 220 Elite, and this one happens to be a stainless one. This is the carry version, and this is a hammer-fired pistol. And what is a hammer-fired pistol? Well, it has an external hammer that has to come back for every time that it goes off. And what this does, that's when you pull the trigger, it releases the hammer hits the firing pin hits the primer on the cartridge and sends the projectile down the barrel. Now, this design has been around a lot longer than the striker fired pistol. Even though the striker fired pistol was made in the early 1900s, it really didn't catch on until Glock really perfected it in the 1980s. These have been around a lot longer than that. Beginning of the 1900s, you started using hammer-fired pistols. Actually, when revolvers are hammer-fired pistols, they were in the 1800s, so they've been around a long time. Now, we're going to talk about some advantages and disadvantages of them. With the striker-fired pistol, the advantage is the simplicity of it. And you just cock this gun, and you carry it just like this. You have the round chambered in the cylinder or in the chamber, and when you draw this gun, it is ready to fire right away. It's very simple. There's no kind of safety mechanisms or anything like that. On this particular Glock, the safety's right here on the trigger, so this little button has to be pressed in order for this gun to go off, and it's drop safe. There's internal safeties that keep this thing a lot safer than people think they are. Now, when you carry this gun, when you pull it out, there's nothing to release or anything like that. You just pull the trigger and it goes off. Usually Glocks come in around a 5.5 pound trigger pull. They're kind of inconsistent, if you want my opinion, but usually they're about a 5.5 pound trigger pull right out of the box. Now, with the hammer fired one, this particular one, the reason I chose this one is this is a double action, single action. So the way you would carry this is you would charge this gun and the hammer would cock. Well, there's no external safety on this one either, so that doesn't work very well for having carry it with the cock like this. So what this one has, it has an extra lever here that releases the hammer, it drops it down, and It's called a decocker. So it lowers it down. As you can see, it's not even close to hitting the fire pin. So that's the way you would carry this. And when you draw this out, your first initial pull is going to be a double action pull. And then from there on out, it's going to be single action. You have a reset and then you pull it. So this gun will work in double action, or if you cock it, it'll work in single action. This is a double action, single action hammer fired gun. Now, what are some of the advantages of it? Well, the advantage of the Glock is there's nothing to do to it. Once you pull this out, you pull it and you have a 5.5 pound trigger pull right out the gate. With the SIG, the double action, and you have it decocked, the disadvantage is when you pull this out, the very first initial trigger pull is going to be quite a bit heavier than a striker fired pistol. This one's going to come in probably 8 to 9 pounds, I would guess, just right out the shooting from the hip. It's going to be about an 8 to 9 pound pull on the double action, but your first initial trigger pull is going to be quite a bit heavier. And then once this gun cycles, from there on out, it's going to be single action. It's going to be significantly less, and we'll talk about that here in a second. Now, so the disadvantages to a striker-fired pistol is the trigger. The trigger on these things are never going to be what a hammer-fired pistol is. If you look real close to this, you'll see how spongy this is because it's trying to release that striker inside there. Just a real spongy. Now they do have better triggers on some striker fired pistols than a Glock, but everybody loves the Glock. The Glock's the one that perfected the striker fired pistol, so this is what I'm going to use. But if you see, it's a real spongy. I'm going to be quiet for a second. Just a real spongy trigger, and then when you pull it up to the wall, there's a little bit of grittiness, and then it goes off. The reset on these things are excellent. You know, you have a real tactile reset, and then it goes off. So it's a pretty decent trigger. Now, with this hammer-fired pistol, the first one is pretty consistent through, but it's a lot heavier. But if you look, the reset on this in single action is right there. And then this is about probably a 4.5 pound trigger. So this is a great trigger on this gun. And you're never going to duplicate a hammer-fired pistol with a hammer-fired pistol trigger with a striker-fired trigger. So if you're out competition shooting or target shooting, this gun's not going to be quite as accurate because you have a little bit more work to do on the trigger, and it can make inconsistent shots. With this spongy trigger right here, you know, you're feeling all around. This is going to move a little bit, and this is not going to be your best option for straight target shooting or any kind of competition or anything. You're probably going to want to use a hammer-fired pistol for that. With this one, when you're target shooting, your first shot can be single action, and you're not going to duplicate that at all with a striker fired pistol. There's your take up, it goes off, second shot, reset, go. So the trigger is the number one advantage that a hammer fired pistol is going to have over a striker fired pistol. Now, one of the other advantages of you don't have any kind of external hammer on this thing, so there's less things to snag on you and stuff like that. So that's one big advantage on most kind of hammer fired ones. You know, you have this big hammer sticking out the back that cycles right here, and that can snag on things if you were to carry it. It's just more stuff on the outside. One of the advantages about this, there's no external safety on it, no extra steps. Well, this one doesn't have an external safety either. If you leave it in the cock position and you decock it, it's the same thing. When you pull it out, it's ready to go. It's just you're going to have a little bit heavier trigger pull. Now, some of the hammer-fired pistols that people like to compare these to are 1911s. 1911s are the benchmark of triggers, but they do have external safeties on them. And when you carry them, you have to carry them with the hammer cocked, and there's this thumb safety right here that you have to have on. So when you draw it out, whereas you're going to have a superior trigger, there's an extra step that you have to release the safety on them. So that's a disadvantage on them. Now, what a lot of people think, especially the old school people, they think that these these striker fired pistols are not as safe because you're carrying around essentially cocked with a round in the chamber and no safety on them all the time. That's true and not true, really. These things, there's been a lot of research and stuff done, but a lot of R&D, research and development done to make these things drop safe. So they are relatively safe to carry around. Now, if you're a worrywart, you need to get one with a safety on it. You know, if you're worried about having a safety or this thing going off, but rest assured that these, especially these Glock pistols, they are drop safe and they are not going to go off if you drop them. But there are a lot of concerns, and I understand carrying it around where all somebody has to do is reach in here and pull this trigger and it will go off. I mean, that is kind of a concern, but if that's something you can't live with, there are options out there where they have thumb safeties for striker fired pistols. As far as this one, it's the same thing. It really doesn't have an external safety on it, and somebody could reach in and grab this at any time, but the trigger pull is so heavy, I would think it'd be rather hard for somebody to make this gun go off without you wanting them to. I think you could probably neutralize that before it even happened. But very true with this one also. With the 1911, the hammer fired one, there actually is a safety on it. There's a safety back here. There's a grip safety on it. So there's a few different safety features, but anytime you start adding safeties, you're adding an extra step. So these things are a lot more complicated to tear down on the hammer fired guns, and there's a lot more moving parts and stuff in them, but they tend to be better made. The fit and finish is a lot better than they are on these polymer frame striker fired pistols, and they tend to be a little more accurate because of the build quality on them. So it depends on what you're using them for. If you're using it for self-defense, you know, you really don't need to put 5 bullets through the same hole at 15 yards from a bench rest. This striker fired gun will be just fine. Now, if you're out competition shooting, you're going for the greatest accuracy, you're probably going to want the better trigger. I would probably choose the hammer fired one. You know, it's up to you folks, whichever one you want to do. There's advantages and disadvantages to all. These are a lot more costly to manufacture, thus making it a lot more costly to buy by the end user. So a hammer fired gun is usually going to be more expensive than the polymer frame striker fired guns. Very neat concept though that they came up with. I think Gadsden Glock was a genius when he came up with this polymer frame and this simple design that almost anybody can take one of these apart and put it back together with their eyes closed and not have a bit of problem. With the hammer fired ones, not so much. It's a little bit more complicated to take down, but I wouldn't say it's complicated at all. But let me know which ones you prefer, a striker fired pistol versus a hammer fired pistols. And we're not going to talk about capacity on these two. I know this one's a single stack. I know this one's a double stack. That's not what we're discussing today, folks. All we're discussing is the firing mechanism on the inside, hammer fired versus striker fired. And I picked 2 of them that were within the same caliber and about the same size. But anyway, folks, I hope everybody had a happy holiday. I hope everybody has a safe new year out there. We're going to get making more videos now, and I hope everybody comes and watches, and thank you very much for watching my video today, and you folks have a great day.